Hi, everybody. I'm Chris Preimesberger, editor of eWEEK. Thank you very much for joining us today for this latest segment of eWEEK eSpeaks. It's a series of conversations with IT thought leaders from all around the world and all around the business of IT. Our interviewee today is Jakub Lamik. Jakub is the Chief Product Officer, the CPO of Redgate Software. Jakub, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, Jakub, good to meet you for the first time and hear about Redgate. Tell me a little bit about your background and what Redgate does. What business problem does it, or an IT problem does it solve?
Of course, thanks. So myself, I started at Redgate 2 years ago as a Chief Product Officer. My background is largely in software. I have been software engineer working in the database and Linux domains. I've spent a few years in working computer graphics and smartphone mobile area. Then I eventually crossed to the dark side of product management, starting as a product manager, head of product management. In my last role, prior to joining Redgate, I was vice president of product at ARM Holdings. This is Cambridge, UK Cambridge IP licensing business, recently acquired by NVIDIA. My role at Redgate is about looking after the product strategy, product vision, and how does it map into the company strategy. What does Redgate do? We like to think about ourselves as a leader in end-to-end DevOps, data privacy and protection, and estate management. What we're looking is to address problems of database developers, data professionals. Our products are deployed in about 90% of Fortune 100 companies. Company has been founded in 1999, so we've been around for for over 2 decades. We also launched a number of community hubs, such as SimpleTalk, as well as SQL Server Central that we acquired and running since then. So a go-to community for SQL Server professionals. We have about 800,000 of people using Redgate products across the world.
Wow, that's impressive. 90% or so of the Fortune 100, you said?
That's correct, yes.
That's impressive. And Redgate is probably a company that maybe not a lot of people have heard about, but you're out there working, you're selling, your product is being used and obviously is working very well for them. You mentioned something in your introduction just now, a terminology that I haven't really heard before. I've heard database, I've heard DevOps, but never really together. Can you define what that means? And is that really the main product that Redgate brings to the table?
That is correct. So our mission is to speed up the software delivery with repeatable process to stop the database being a bottleneck in the organizations, either depending or delivering software. A lot of our customers are software businesses that have a software at heart of how their business responds to customers. And our vision for that part is the database shouldn't stand in the way in the same way that development processes for software shouldn't stay in the way. What we have seen is something that Redgate has built our experience on is database changes often slow things down, and there is risk associated with those database changes. And it's harder increasingly with the complexity of those databases and complexity of the teams or size of the teams or number of teams working on the database to deliver value. So what we are delivering as our solution is to end-to-end solution for continuous integration and continuous delivery of database changes. Idea being that your database can be managed with similar or the same tools as the application code, and both development paths can be kept in sync. And that's the basic idea we are building our database DevOps solutions on.
Yeah, database and storage over the years, and being a former storage reporter at eWEEK, they always seem to be roadblocks. I mean, whether it was in the pipes or the connections or the software, that used to be the real big problem in IT.
Indeed.
Was that connection between the server and the storage, or server and the database, and everything in between. And the idea of being agile with making fixes and improvements and patches and everything else is ideal, and that's what you guys basically do, isn't it?
Indeed, yes. we are focusing on, as I said, continuous integration, continuous delivery. And we're seeing a lot of emerging trends about database DevOps adoption and overall software delivery and operational performance, and companies looking to increase the speed of the delivery and free up their time to do some other value-added work, and effectively increasing their time to delivery from development to production.
Yeah, that's one less thorny problem to have to deal with when you can let that go and work on other stuff that's more important to the business itself. So that's good. You got an event coming up in about 10 days, a virtual event, I take it, because that's what we do now at this point. Tell me a little bit about the purpose of that, and what people can expect if they decide to tune into it.
Sure. Yes. So Redgate Summit will take place on the 17th and 18th of February, and the focus of this Redgate Summit is on future of database DevOps. So we'll cover topics including why database is a key for IT transformation. This is obviously something particularly interesting in the times we're living in right now. We'll also cover the latest DevOps trends, and we'll look at the results from the 5th annual State of the Database DevOps report.
Okay, can you give us a sneak peek of one or two factoids perhaps from the report that might be interesting?
Yes. So we're talking obviously to our customers, and we running the report. There are key interesting insights we have noticed recently. The first one is we're seeing significant adoption of DevOps for database in general, from 47% companies we talked last year to over 74 companies this year. What's other interesting fact is that also we're seeing the increase in the cross database estates from 61 to 70. So nearly half of organizations now having 3 or more different databases in use. We also see increased adoption of cloud. Only 25% of the companies we talk to are on-prem only, and 75% are now having estates that are largely in cloud, and obviously those companies continue to migrate their environments towards that direction.
Yeah, well, I see a couple of real trends in those stats, like you said, important ones. Thanks for bringing those to our attention. Redgate does not make a database of its own, correct? It's only about the tools that database developers and admins, whatever, use, correct? And what databases do you work with? Any database or what?
Yeah, so starting first with your question, we don't develop a database environments. What we provide is the solutions for database environments, either around standardizing team-based development, so delivering the changes faster, automating database deployments, as we talked, focusing on database DevOps, monitoring performance and availability of the data estate, so more operational aspect of making sure that the data estate is available. And then most recently, protecting and preserving data, so keeping sensitive data and staying compliant in the development process. Historically, Redgate has been focused on SQL Server as the primary data platform, but over the last years, we have obviously expanded. We're seeing the trends that I mentioned around customers and environment around us increasingly using different database environment. Microsoft itself expanding the support in Azure to database environments other than SQL Server only, and we are supporting SQL Server, we're supporting Oracle. We'll introduce a number of additional database environments in our enterprise product. As a foundation of our database DevOps technology, we're using Flyway that's supporting over 20 database environments to start with. So that's already a baseline that we're starting with, increasingly adding value on the top of this, going to the enterprise solutions.
So Jakub, do you have a freemium solution, a kind of an entry solution, or what?
That's a very good question. So our solution is effectively organized around those 3 different. So starting with Flyway. Flyway is one of the most popular open source database migration frameworks, I think downloaded by millions of users every month. And we acquired it, but we're continuing to contribute and investing if it's open source and if open source form, and we continue to add features and continuing the roadmap for open source. Then we have paid version of Flyway that enables when individual developers move to the team-based development, they can choose to adopt it. And at the enterprise level, we have a product starting with Redgate Deploy. It's based on Flyway, but focusing mainly on the enterprise level and senior organization stakeholders and the larger organizations when you deploy database DevOps at the large scale.
Okay. So Jakub, we have about a minute and a half left. I was just kind of wondering, I was thinking about your background at ARM. You've done a lot of different type jobs in IT, but at ARM, very successful company, recently purchased or acquired by NVIDIA, one of the hottest chip companies in the world. How did your background in chips there transfer over to Redgate?
That's a very good question. So my background is less in chips, more in software, and the software, which is also part of ARM business. I think an interesting part of this, both companies have really customer at heart. I think both of those companies are extremely focused on the customer value and focusing on the end customer, and that's something I found quite good fit for myself. Both of those companies have quite rich historic background and also are well known for the culture, which was extremely important for me. But this customer focus and actually trying to understand customer problems and trying to address as the primary way of growing and expanding the business and the portfolio was something that really resonated with me. And it's fair to say the software in many ways, it's similar. Obviously, semiconductor itself is quite different, but having a customer at heart is probably the key in both successful businesses.
Wow, very good. So if any of our viewers wants to go delve a little deeper into Redgate, they could find you at Redgate.com.
That's correct. Yes, that's
all
correct.
Right. Yeah, that's a good way to do a domain. Keep it simple. Don't get too fancy with domains. So Jakub Lamik, thank you very, very much for filling us in on yourself and the company and your event coming up shortly. And good luck to you going forward, for sure.
Thank you for having me. Pleasure.
Yeah. And for everybody following along to the end here, thank you very much for joining us today. Have a great rest of your eWEEK. Thanks for joining us on eWEEK eSpeaks. Go to eWEEK.com to hear more conversations with IT thought leaders.